Hello everyone, welcome to Rise of Coding. In this tutorial, we will build a books website where you can explore a variety of books and view detailed information about each one and search for specific titles. We will develop this website using React, TypeScript, Redux Toolkit, and the OpenLibrary API to fetch and display books data dynamically. So before we start, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I already created a React app using Vite, and you can find the Start project in the link in the description below. First, we need to install the dependencies, Redux Toolkit, React Redux, Axios, React Router DOM, and React Icons. Now let's start creating the header component. We will define the type of this component as React Functional Component. We import the style file from the styles folder. And for the JSX, we will return a div with class name of header section. Inside this div, we have another div with class name of header container. And inside of it we have the logo title. After the H2, we will have the search form, so let's create it in separated component. First, we will define this component as React Functional Component. Then we will import the style file. And for the JSX, we will return a div with class name of search section. Inside of it we have a div with class name of search container. And inside of it we have a form that have a div with class name of form container. Inside this div, we have an input and a button with the search icon. Now let's save and import this component at the header component. We will add it after the H2. And after it, we will add the categories component. I already created it, and you can find it in the Start project. Now let's import the header component at the app file. Now let's save and have a look. For the home page, we will display the books data fetched from the API, and we will use Redux Toolkit to manage the state and make the API call. So we will start by set up the Redux Toolkit. Inside the Redux folder, we will create book slice and store. We will use OpenLibrary API. And we don't need any authentication or create an account. We just need the API URL, so we will store it inside the book slice. Then we will create an async thunk for fetching the books data according to the category. This function takes two parameters. The first one is string identifier, used for action names. And the second parameter is asynchronous function that take category as a parameter. And inside this function, we will use axios.get to send a GET request to the API endpoint. Then we will return the fetched data. After that, we will define the type of the data that the function returns. According to the OpenLibrary API, the data of each category contains an array of works that include data for each book. So we will create an interface that matches the fetched data. And also we define the type of the argument. Now we will create another async func that fetches search results from the OpenLibrary API based on a user's query. This function takes two parameters. The first one is string identifier, used for action names. And the second parameter is asynchronous function that take query as a parameter. And inside this function, we will use axios.get to send a GET request to the API endpoint. Then we will map over the fetched data to return only the data that we will use inside our app. Then we will define the type for these return value. We misput an empty square brackets here. Now we will create an interface for the search results that matched the return values. And we will add this type within the async func. And also we define the type of the query argument. And define the type of the return value. Then we will create another async func for the book details. This function takes two parameters. The first one is string identifier, and the second one is asynchronous function that take book ID as a parameter. And inside this function we will use axios.get to send a GET request to the API endpoint. Then we will return the fetched data. Then we will define the type of the fetched data. So we will create an interface for the book details that including the type of the data that we will use. Then we will add that interface inside the async func call. And also after the axios.get function. And we will define the type of the book ID argument. Then we will create the initial state that we will use it for the book slice. Then we will create an interface to define the type of the initial state. And we will add that interface to the initial state. Then we will create the book slice to manage the book state. And then we will add the name and the initial state properties to it. This slice will accept extra reducers to handle the actions created by the async func. So first we will handle the fetch books by category actions. So we will add the case of pending. For this case, we will set the loading state to true and error state to null. Then we will add the fulfilled case. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false and the books by category state to the action.payload.books. And we will define a structure of the expected payload. Then we will add the case of rejected. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false, and the error state to action.error.message, or the default message. Then we will handle the fetch search results actions. And we will add the case of pending. And for this case, we will set the loading state to true, and the error state to null. Then we will add the case of fulfilled. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false, and the search result state to action.payload. And we will define a structure of the expected payload. Then we will add the rejected case. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false, and the error state to the action.error.message, or the default message. Then we will handle the fetch book details actions, and we will add the pending case. And for this case, we will set the loading state to true, and the error state to null. Then we will add the fulfilled case. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false, and the book details state to action.payload. And we will define a structure of the expected payload. Then we will add the rejected case. And for this case, we will set the loading state to false, and the error state to action.error.message, or the default message. Then we will export the slices reducer, so it can be included in the Redux store. Then we will configure the Redux store, and import the books reducer from BookSlice, and integrates it into the store. Then we will export the root state type that ensure type safety for state selection. Then we will export the app dispatch type that ensure type safety for dispatching actions. Then inside the main file, we will wrap the app component with the provider and task the store to it. Now we're ready to display the fetched data inside our app. So let's create the home page. We will define the type of this component as React Functional Component. First, we will use the useDispatch hook to dispatch the API call. And we define the type of the dispatch, with app-dispatch imported from the store. Then we will access to the books by category state by using the useSelector hook. And we will define the state, with root state imported from the store. Then inside useEffect hook, we will create an array of the categories. Then we will loop over each category to check if we fetched books by category or not. Then we will dispatch fetch books by category action and pass the category to it. And the useEffect runs whenever the dispatch or books by category changes. Then we will render book categories and display the fetched books for each category. So we will return a div with class name of home section, and inside of it we have a div with class name of home container. Then we will change books by category object to an array, then we will map over it. Then we will extract the books for each category. Then we will return a div section with class name of books for each category to display its content. So inside this div, we have a div with class name of home title that have an h3 with the category name. And for the fetched books, we will display them in a separate component. So we will create BookList Component. And we will import it after the div with class name of home title, and we will pass the books to it as a prop. But we don't need to display all the fetched books for each category, so we will use slice function to display only for books for each category. Inside the BookList component, we will receive the books prop. And we will define this component as React Functional Component. Then we will import the BookList style file. Then we will create book interface that represents the structure of each individual book object. This interface includes properties that match with the provided data from OpenLibrary API. Then we will create interface to define the prop type. Now we will use the books array inside the JSX. So we will return a div with class name of BookList. Then we will check if we have the fetched books, so we will map over it. And we will return a div with class name of book item. Inside this div, we have a div with class name a book image. Inside of it, we will check if the cover image data is cover_ID or cover_I. Then we will return an image that src match the provided data. Then, after the div with class name a book image, we have another div with class name a book info. Inside of this div we have a div with class name a book title, and inside of it have an h3 for the book title. After the book title div, we have a div with class name a book author. Inside of it we have a span, and we will display the first author's name, either from the authors array or author_name array. Then, after the div with class name of book info, we have another div with class name of details. And if we don't have the fetched books, we will return a div with no books found. Now let's save and import the home page at the app file. Now let's save and have a look. The book image isn't display, so I think I made a typo. So let's back to the BookList component and fix it. Inside the image src, we will change the M to uppercase M. Let's save and have a look. Now we need to handle the search function. So inside the search component, we will create a state for the user's query. And we will use the useNavigate hook to navigate to the search page after the search function is executed. And we will use the useDispatch hook. Then we will create the handle search function. Inside this function, first we will prevent the default submission behavior. Then we will check if the query is not just empty spaces. Then we will dispatch fetch search results action and pass the query to it. Then we will navigate to the search page. And then we will resetting the input field after the search is submitted. Then on submit the form, we call handle search function. And then set the input value as the query. And on change we set the query to e.target.value. Now we will create the search results page. We will access to the search results state, and loading state, and error state by using the useSelector hook. And we need when we navigate to this page, it scroll to the search results, so we will use window.scrollTo function inside useEffect hook. And for the JSX, we will return a div with class name of home section. And inside of it we have a div with class name of home container. Inside this div we have a div with class name of books that have a div with class name of home title. Then after this div, we will check if it's loading, then we will return the loading component. And if we have an error then we will return a div with the error message. And if we fetched the search results, then we will return the BookList component and pass the search results to it as a prop. Here we don't need to display all the fetched search results, so we will use the slice function to set a limit. Now we need to use the React Router DOM to navigate to the search results page. So inside the app file, we will import browser router and routes and route from React Router DOM. Then we will return router, and inside of it we have the header. Then we have the routes. We will create a route for the home page and another route for the search results page. Now let's save and have a look. We got the error message, so I think I made a typo. Let's open the book slice file to fix this error. Inside the fetch search results function, we should map over the docs. Let's save and try again. Now the search function works fine. Now we need to navigate to the book details page when we click at one of these books. Now we will create the book page. We will define it as React functional component. We will import book.css file. First we will get the ID from the current URL by using the useParams hook. And we will define the type of this ID as string. Then we will access to the book details state by using the useSelector hook. Then we will use the useDispatch hook. And inside the use effect hook, we will first check if the ID exists. Then we will dispatch fetch book details action and pass the ID to it. And the effect will rerun whenever the dispatch changes or the ID. And now for the JSX, we will return a div with class name of details container. Inside of it, we have the Go Back button. And when we click on this button, it will navigate to the home page. So we will use the use navigate hook. Then after this button, we will have a div with class name of book details. And inside of it, we have a div with class name of book image. And inside of this div, we will check if we fetched book details covers data. Then we will return an image of the book details cover. Then, after this div, we have another div with class name of book info. Inside this div, we have an h2 for the book title. Then have h for the book subjects. Then p tag for the book description. The OpenLibrary API provide different data formats for the book details description, so we need to handle the cases where description is either an object or a string. Now after creating the book page, we need to add a root for it. Now we need to update the BookList component. We will replace this div with link from React Router DOM and give it the exact path that the book root has. Now let's save and have a look. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you had any questions, feel free to ask.